Okay. Good morning. My name is Vidya. And if I had to introduce myself in let us say, two or three statements, um, the two most significant aspects of my identity are me being a teacher and me being a parent of a neurodivergent child. Um, I have been a parent for 25, 26 years and a teacher for about 14. Um, and that's the sum up of it. My topic today, on which I'll be sharing my thoughts with you people, I've titled it "Teaching to Empower," and I would like to. Begin it with a disclaimer that when I come to you with this monologue, I come with the insights of a teacher, not a scholar, not a researcher, not a philosopher on the topic, not a pedagogy expert, just somebody who's been taking the floor to teach in the classroom, has dealt with certain questions thrown at by the environment and by my own thought process and the sensibility and making sense of the changing world. And these are some questions that at some points in time have kind of bothered you, and you have wondered, okay, what is the changing shape of education and what are you doing here? And then I realized that a lot of times we kind of consider it fashionable to be angry about the system, to be angry about a process, till the reality kicks in and you recognize that, listen, there's one option to be constantly angry about something, and there is another option to find a balance, to find the middle path where you recognize that the world of a certain domain or enterprise is changing, and then find the best way to function most constructively, most productively in that changed scenario. So when the school reformer approached me to have a 20-minute or a 30-minute conversation on something, at that point I had reached this moment of peace where I said that, listen, I don't have to be perpetually angry about the changing face of education, but I should learn how to draw my own satisfaction out of it. And that conversation that helped me become a more peaceful educator is the conversation that I'm bringing to you. I call it teaching to empower because when I said that I identify best as two people, and one of them is an educator or teacher. Um, so the reason I call it teaching to empower and why I identify so proudly as a teacher is because I truly believe that as a teacher, um, I feel very empowered to empower other individuals. And I also think that this is the most powerful profession, because the moment you need a change, or the moment you recognize the need for a change, you can come back to your classroom and start working on it. So you don't have to sit on an idea or wait for somebody else to change the reality around you. You can actually come back to the classroom and bring your ideas responsibly and sensibly to the audience which is looking up to you, and the change can begin there. And that's why I think that the best way to look at teaching is as something which helps you to empower. But before that, one has to recognize that it has empowered me, and you need to feel powerful within yourselves. So that's my idea, for today. Having gone through that disclaimer and having established that context, one of the buzzwords of today's process of education or system of education is lifelong learning. if you consider any curricula, whether national or international, one of the things that it promises or assures its target audience, be it the parents or the direct target audience of the product, is that we will make you a lifelong learner. Um, on the face of it, it's a simple, it's a combination of simple words in English, the expression lifelong learning, nothing very technical or mysterious or mystical about it. Lifelong learning, which means I promise that you will turn into an individual, or you will shape into an individual who will continue to learn throughout. Fair enough, but what does it entail? What does it, in practical sense, mean? So, if I call myself a lifelong learner, or if I'm saying that I will turn my individuals, I'll shape my students into lifelong learners, what are some of the attributes that they will manifest or show? One of the things is that they will have active curiosity, that they will constantly, and constantly doesn't mean every moment, but whenever there is that scope to observe something and question it, try and offer explanation for a phenomena, either to yourself or to the world, it needs that curiosity. So that need of active curiosity, that I'm going to keep wondering, I'm going to keep trying making sense of the status quo, the possible alternatives, and the ways to offer and execute those alternatives. So, one of the attributes of lifelong learning is that. The second attribute is when you are ready, willing, and okay with having a beginner's mindset. Now, what does a beginner's mindset mean? That you are okay with seeing yourself being a beginner, irrespective of the age or stage in your life. For instance, if I am a 50-year-old a woman, um, do I have it in me to be a beginner at this age in any field? Um, I don't just mean a change in profession, but in any kind of a skill acquisition or knowledge acquisition, or anything new. Do I have it in me to be a beginner? Or after a certain age, I think that, listen, I'm done feeling nervous and anxious and uncertain and unfamiliar. I now want to come across as a set, solid adult who knows where they are and what their role is. So, do you have it in yourself to embrace that beginner's mindset? That's what lifelong learning entails. In my idea of lifelong learning, an individual is a self directed explorer, which means while they will be guided in their exploration by their circumstances, social, cultural, professional, and all of that, but the need to pursue that exploration is inherent. It's intrinsic. The motivation is intrinsic. They are not doing something only as an outcome of an external pressure or external push or motivation. Um, the penultimate, or the second last uh, quality that I identify with being lifelong learners, is the cognitive agility. How much of a capacity to think, rethink, and continuously explain, explore, research, absorb, discourse, information, knowledge that reaches you. How much of agility do you have in your cognition or cognitive department is something that defines whether you will continue to be a lifelong learner or not. Do you have that kind of a stamina? And the final, and in not any sense, the last quality is a reflective practice. How much do you have within you constantly to go inwards, but not just physically by just being silent, but how much of a readiness do you have to look at phenomena, both internal and external, thoughtfully, consciously, rationally, objectively, in order to make sense of it, in order to consider the pro, con, the fine, the not so fine of it. How much of quiet observation, objective, detached observation are you willing to give? Those are some of the qualities that I consider of a, lifelong learner. And that is a quality that you click any website of any school, any educational institution, they would, the quality that they promise the most is that lifelong learning. But before that, why is it needed? Why are we harping so much about lifelong learning? Why does somebody have to become a lifelong learner? What significance is there of this quality? Um, we live in the world of acronyms, or maybe they were always there, and now because of the internet and excessive sharing, we are they keep dancing inside our head and outside. But two of the most interesting sounding, they almost sound like names of hurricanes, that are making rounds in terms of describing the world, are perhaps VUCA and something called Bina. And the way people are describing the world is that, listen, it is volatile, it is unpredictable, it is complex, and it is abstract. It is brittle, it is anxious, it is ever changing, it is incomprehensible. So, those two acronyms define the kind of world that we are living in. It is unpredictable, it is not set. What is relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow. So, if we are imparting skill, knowledge, concepts which have a short shelf life, which are very content oriented, and which do not develop attitudinal readiness or attribute readiness, then the education that we are imparting has a very limited function, has a limited purpose. And therefore, lifelong learning has professional relevance, because most skills come with a shelf life. And if I just focus on content and skills, I will not be training my students very effectively. The other reason why we need lifelong learning, apart from the fact that the world is ever changing and abstract and complex and dynamic, is that for yourself, lifelong learning impacts your cognitive health positively. So, one is it builds the stamina, and you have the cognitive reserve to deal with what ever the ever changing times continue to throw at you, scholastically, academically, culturally, and in every other sense. And the other thing is, because you are so cognitively active, because you are so constantly agile, thinking on your feet, making sense, you have the enthusiasm, you have the beginner's mindset, you are also warding off or keeping at bay the cognitive decline. Um, so it kind of ensures that it's like a workout for your cognitive capabilities. The more you use the capacities meaningfully, of course, you're not just building the current or present stamina, but you are also ensuring that you are preventing or slowing its decline. Um, so, is everything about profession? Is everything about cognition? No. Lifelong learning also has a lot of psychological fulfillment and purpose to offer. I saw a post on LinkedIn yesterday by a gentleman who happens to be my brother. He retired sometime last year as a in from a leadership role in a pharmaceutical company, and then after retirement, he did a course on alternative intelligence, and now he is a member of a forum which consults for people who aspire to be directors of enterprises, and I don't know too many nitty-gritties of what he's doing, but it is very different from what he was doing so far. And it was very interesting. I mean, he wrote that post with so much of of pride that life doesn't end with superannuation. Maybe some years back, when my parents or my grandparents retired, a certain aspect of their life stopped being relevant. So there was no work to go to. There was no professional, scenario to respond to. But today it is not like that. You can continue to remain professionally relevant, and that gives you, the adrenaline rush, the good kind of adrenaline rush, which gives you a sense of agency, which gives you a sense of accomplishment, where you don't have to, just making peace with the aging you. You are continuing to thrive, and it's not just a desperate attempt to stay relevant, but it also is giving you a lot of fulfillment. But if you do not continue to be a lifelong learner, if you do not enable yourself to embrace that beginner's mindset, then that you will be depriving yourself of that sense of accomplishment. In short, lifelong learning is something to survive the ever changing world, to prevail, and to continue to stay relevant when you are going to transition from one phase of life to another, something which is a constant in everybody's life. Um, now, um, how do we build the foundations for lifelong learning? Okay, lifelong learning is this amazing, uh, you know, concept that if you acquire, I mean, I almost make it sound like anti-aging, strategy. But in order to be a lifelong learner, or to derive or to reap the benefits of it, what do we need? How, as educators, do we need to, build those practices, or that, foundation for it? Um, One very important thing is to get our students to shift from the performance mindset to the growth mindset. So generally, I mean, when parents come to a school, or students come to a classroom, or they look up to you, obviously, I mean, they are teenagers. I mean, you don't expect them to have very what do you call philosophical pursuits or non-materialistic pursuits. They are clearly there for a kind of a short-term goal. Okay, how do I reach middle school? How do I reach high school? How do I reach a good college? How do I reach a good profession, a promising relationship, and all of those things? But while promising those things, while promising that the performance that they need to transition to the next phases of their learning, it is very important to instill the need for growth. Telling them that, listen, you're not just learning this to proceed from point A and land at point B, but this skill is going to be useful for something else. For instance, I'm a teacher of English. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell this in my introduction, that I teach both English and theory of knowledge in the IBTP curriculum. I also have an exposure of teaching checkpoint and IGCSE English, A levels English under the Cambridge International Examinations. So, if I were to give an example of, from my subject, my students want to write. There are four assessment components in IB English: paper one, paper two, individual oral, and higher level essay. Obviously, my students are entrusting me with the responsibility of making them score the most highest. Actually, let me not euphemize their expectations. They want to score the highest, and I do position myself as being capable of getting them to that goal. But I do not miss telling them that, listen, yes, this is the skill which will get you a 6 on 7 or 7 on 7 in English. But you know why this skill is important? So that the next time you listen to a interview, the next time you listen to a podcast, the next time you're watching a news item, the next time somebody is sending a tweet or a WhatsApp message or a whatever social media post, this is the critical mindset that you are supposed to apply to continue to remain unbiased and rational and objective. So I am empowering them to protect themselves. And that is something that I need to give along with the performance that I'm promising to them. So that shift is important. The other set of practices, or the other set of inputs and instructions that need to go to make them lifelong learners is getting them to feel agentic and empowered. Ask for yourself, you want something, you don't want something. First of all, instill the need to respect and dignity, and communicating with respect and dignity, but cultivate agency. Wonder why you are doing something, wonder what its relevance is, wonder if there are alternatives. And all the scope that the assessments offer are full of this agency, but you need to, beyond the assessments, you need to tell them why this agency is useful later. So as an adult, I am agentic and I'm empowered because as a young adult, or as a young child, I was trained to be agentic and empowered. So this is not a switch on, switch off quality that comes suddenly as an adult. So if you want to be professionally agentic, and politically agentic, or in any other sense, financially agentic, it is not something which is going to come overnight. It happens only when you train them for it. Treating them to deal with the information onslaught with reasonable amount of defense, with reasonable amount of critical thinking, and control. I mean control in a very neutral sense, not in a negative sense, but in the sense of, I will decide how I am going to use this information. So if I'm watching a podcast with a certain, political inclination that aligns with my own political ideology, but am I able to detect a bias or something unwanted even in that content which otherwise aligns with my ideology or belief system? Am I empowering them to do that? So from the beginning, get them to use resources, all that you share, and all the websites or all the research material that they are referring to, using engagement activities to get them to see that, do not consume, read, go through, but don't absorb all that you are going through. You need to have the control of what goes inside your head and stays there and occupies space. That control needs to be in your hand, and that's when it becomes a superpower. So use it as a tool. Okay, I'm not going to avoid using the slave imagery, but you do not become its slave. Use it as your slave. I mean, I'm using it with a lot of responsibility. Um, Build habits of reflection and synthesis. Like I had said when I was discussing the qualities or attributes of a lifelong learning, even if you detect a certain incoherence or a certain conflict, use the tool of reflection to recognize that, okay, I'm feeling like this for this reason, or this information, or this input, this phenomena, this piece of article that I'm reading, this persuasion that I'm recognizing in this speech or in this advertising material, has this impact on me. So that idea of reflection and self awareness, and that processing of that, becomes very important in instilling lifelong learning. Building engagements where you ask them, wait, if you are responding like this, why is it, what all is going into that response, what is your identity, what how is your identity reflecting in shaping your response to that situation? Those engagements enable that. And very important, to get them to synthesize all that you have imparted to them and use. Let them not store what you are sharing with them as formula for temporary success, a success in the examination, and let it just go back into the universe, just like it came to them temporarily. So enabling them to synthesize the knowledge and make use of it, not just in their classroom or academic achievements, but in terms of making sense of life. Very, very important to enable them, or talk about rest or recreational activities in terms of having empowering potential. So every time you take, first of all, talk to them about how there is a need to give yourself a break from constant thinking, constant cognitive activity, constant churning of thoughts and ideas inside your head. That can get exhausting. And to look at those reflectively, and to look at those with responsible, as an information literacy champion, you need a little bit of a balance or a break from it. So have classroom engagements where you are encouraging them to engage with activities of creative expression, engage them with in activities which give them that respite, which give them that rest. Very, very important to build that kind of a stamina, because once they recognize that, they will understand that even as adult professionals, they need to give themselves break in order to come back to a demanding situation with a lot of energy. So these are some of the practices that we build to make lifelong learners out of our young adults who come into our educational process. Um, Now, what do our what are some of the stakeholders in the business of education, and what do they look at us in terms of aspirations? What do they look at us for? So, what do parents want? Parents want us, to make their children uh, skilled, knowledgeable, equipped to build a productive career for themselves. That's what they are looking at us for. And in at least the Indian context, they also want us to instill values and qualities in them. They certainly, I mean, parents today are a lot more. They are coming from a point of anxiety and control, that I want my child to get the best. I want them to get the best exposure, and all of that. So therefore, they come with a certain formula in their mind, and they would like you to respond to that formula. But fair enough. Ultimately, what they are looking for is a stable and secure life for their children, and that's their aspiration. What do students come to you with? The kind of aspirations they also want you to, in their limited understanding, they have been conditioned to have a certain vision or image of a future, certain dreams, certain aspirations. They want to play you to play a supportive role to that, an enabling role in that, which is again in its own limited way. It's a fair expectation, and the expanding the scope of both parents and students expectations is ultimately in our hands, and we can play around with it responsibly. Finally, who else is looking at us as educators to deliver? The educational institutions. What do they want from us? In the change scenario, they do want achievements and accomplishments. They want that the students who come to them either walk out with great performances, or they walk out with evidence of learning. So there, not everybody can be data wise an achiever. We know that above average is just the tip of the iceberg. Most of the students are average, and then there is a below average. But educational institutions look at you to say that, okay, whoever is capable of top achievement, take them to the finish line of top achievement. Whoever is capable of landing at an average, bring them to that from wherever they are. And whoever is a struggling achiever, make small progresses, achieve small progress, build their self-esteem, build other competencies in them, and keep them productive and happy. Again, not a very unfair expectations. I realize that I do make it sound like a fairy tale, but what I'm trying to do here is give you a very constructive way to look at all these three expectation, so that you don't end up fighting with it all the time. So if the parents, students, and educational institutions are looking at you with these expectations, what does the curriculum give you, the tools, or in terms of the content, what does it give you to build these or to kind of fulfill these aspirations? they give you a pedagogy, they give you content where you are enabled to keep the focus on concept, expose them to unseen situations, build a rigor in them to research and think analytically, and all of that. Don't limit them to local context, expose them to global context, and build in them the rigor for academics and dealing with complex thought. That's what the curriculum is expecting for us. You will notice that I'm rushing it because I can see the clock ticking. Now, going back to to where we started. We started this conversation with a fight that I was sensing inside me, and I have found a way to deal with it. If that's what lifelong learning requires, and if this is the aspiration of the parents, students, and educational institutions from me, is there really a conflict between these two? Are there not overlaps? Do both these people or both these entities want the same thing from education and from me? I do think at a broad level it is true that they both require the same things. If parents and students are looking at success and security and safety, then lifelong learning will ensure that. So, to be very honest, if the school is offering lifelong learning or is looking at achievements in a certain way, then it is in some way fulfilling that purpose also. But how do we deal with this conflict? As long as your mind is seeing these two things as separate, what are some of the things that you can do in order to bring peace to that conflict, or that battle inside you? First of all, recognize and acknowledge the changing nature of the world. I think as human beings we are conditioned to be cynical and to be angry, which is a good quality. Unless we are angry, we don't do anything to change things. So I mean, let's continue to be cynical. Let's continue to want to disrupt status quo and all of that. But let's also recognize that, listen, the world is changing, and let's acknowledge, and whatever we need to do, let's do within the framework of the changed world. When somebody is demanding a certain thing from you, let us not feel individually or personally questioned or attacked. When somebody comes to us and say that, hey, I want this for my child, I want this for the student that comes to my school, don't think that it is a personal attack on what you have been doing. They just want you to course correct, not correct, but they just want you to shift gears. That can we do something to give a certain tweak to this aspiration? So it is not so much about questioning what you've been doing so far. It is just the need that, hey, I would like you to deliver this to them. So kind of depersonalize it. Do not take it personally. And this is something that I have done myself, and that's why I'm bringing this point into it. The third one is to use the demand to serve as a stimulation for growth. One needs to be, like I said, needs to be a beginner. So I've been very anti-data, and I think I continue to be anti-data. But I have kind of, made my peace. I won't even call it making my peace, but I've understood the relevance or the role that data plays. So I am now using it as a stimulation that, okay, I dislike data. I continue to dislike the importance that society attributes to it today. But you know what? I'm going to turn it into an advantage by working with something that I dislike and continue to produce outcomes that satisfy me. So we do result analysis, we do a review. So yes, I do that. That keeps building. That, listen, it's not just you can't just have a component wise analysis, class wise analysis, section wise analysis, and arrive at this one. But you know what? If these are the patterns that your data is showing, I would use my sensibility, my experience, my insight to address the pattern. I'm not going to fight with the data, but you have given me certain patterns. I will work with it. Much the high likelihood that you will produce a data change that somebody else is looking for. You will be able to change the data story as well. So turn something that you have an aversion for um, to become a stimulation, or to become something that challenges you, and then gives you that sense of accomplishment. and always have constructive conversations. Do not go to a discussion table angry. So if this is how the world is, whether it is students, whether it is parents, or whether it is your leadership, or the educational institution you are working with, understand that there is trust, there is respect, and there is dignity, and have constructive conversations on it. If you feel a certain way, express it respectfully, openly, with dignity, and the person on the other side of the table will be able to offer you some respite from the conflict that you are having. Again, I say this with great personal experience. I'm just going to quickly, run through the five qualities that I think are key to us thriving as educators. One is bring life to your classroom. Irrespective of what subject you teach, unless you bring what is happening outside the classroom to the classroom, you will not feel the excitement. The student will not feel the excitement. They would think that you are just getting them to pass an examination. Understand how teaching and learning works from the way the students perform in the examination. So again, don't get stuck in the data. This one, if a student is getting a 5 on structure, or 5 on how to explain the choices that the author has made in a piece of writing, where is he getting stuck? How much of a reading skill is deficient in that? How much of a lack of vocabulary is contributing to it? So understand something about teaching and learning from the pattern or the trends that the data is throwing at you. That is a way to thrive as an educator. Co-learn with your students. So much of terminology, so much of phenomena the youngsters bring to the table. Let's pick it up. I mean, I pick it up to sound relatable with them, and then it just becomes a way of life. And I just don't mean it in terms of lingo or language, but even in terms of idea, even in terms of thought process. Their constant restlessness, sometimes it has a role to play in terms of bringing you growth. So learn that from your students. Like I said in the previous slide, remain proactive and constructive. Do not resort to being defensive. You are not being questioned or attacked if there is a different demand on you. I know that the clicking clock was ticking clock was kind of built a pressure, so I kind of rushed through the end. But this is the point where I conclude my monologue, which was aimed at bringing to you this resolution of a fight inside me, which I feel a number of educators are experiencing today in their domain, in their work domain. And I'd like to see peace around me, although we are living in a world where 3 wars are going on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Vidya. Wonderful thoughts shared with us. If you can stop sharing your screen, ma'am, we can have a better view. Thank you. Great. So, as you mentioned that because of the time constraint, I'll ask you a couple of questions, ma'am. Can you, talking about the empowerment, can you share a specific example of how you have initiated change from your classroom?
In terms of empowering them?
Yes, please.
Um, so, uh, so, for example, one of the things, one of the attributes that the curriculum that I teach offers, they call it a learning profile, learner's profile. That when a learner studies IB, International Baccalaureate, they develop communication skills, right? And we are, of course, also promising them that you will become a critical thinker. And so then, around college application times, I in the last 5 6 years, I've only taught high school students. So most of the times, sometimes there is this conflict of aspirations. What do I want for myself? What do my parents want? What does my school want? A student also is carrying a weight of expectations from these angles, right? I enable them to make sense of it. That they say that, but why am I not being offered higher level in this subject? Why is my parent resisting, or why is my coordinator resisting? I enable them that, wait, did you go respectfully and ask them, what is your rationale behind it? Why are they saying that this would be better? Have you understood that they are coming from a position of your well being, your interest? And did you give yourself the opportunity to convince them, or even telling them that this is the reason why I don't like the offer that you are giving me? When I do that, what I'm making, enabling a student or empowering a student for is that, whenever you have a doubt, whenever you have a question, instead of feeling restless and disempowered that, oh, I'll have to just accept what people in power in my life are thrusting down my throat, you are empowering them to have respectful conversation that started. And I always tell them, your first sentence should be, I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to insist that you get convinced by my position. How about you tell me what you want, why you are wanting me to do what you are? Now that builds engagement, that builds negotiation. That's a very important communication and thinking skill. You are opening yourself to the other person's perspective. And therefore, when you come back, having had that conversation, you don't feel disenfranchised. You don't feel disempowered. You feel that, okay, either I understand your point of view. I'm probably I'm not old enough to completely see where it is going, but you know what? Okay, fine. I'm willing to go with it. Or you come back, at least having the satisfaction of expressed where you are, why you are positioned where you are. So it is telling them that when I'm teaching you argumentation and articulation of your ideas, I'm not just teaching you how to articulate a paper one essay or a paper two essay. I'm teaching you to articulate your thoughts in a socially conflicting situation, in a personally, interpersonally conflicting situation. And that's what makes better individuals out of us.
Great, ma'am. So, talking about the growth mindset, Miss Vidya, what strategies help shift students from performance to growth mindset?
I'm going to take the risk of sounding repetitive, but going back to my previous
Wow.
example, when I tell them that, so when they are having this higher level, standard level subject choice conversation, it is very, I mean, it begins with that idea of performance. What is good for you academically, profile wise? Where will it lead you in terms of what you will achieve in your final grades? But when you empower them to look at it from the listen, you take English at a higher level. You know why? Because when you do the higher level essay, you are going to write an argumentative, critical essay. And when you do that, you will also build your paper two performance. Now, I'm talking about performance, right? But then when I shift the focus to the art of argumentation and say both of these kinds are a kind of argumentation where you are making a claim, providing evidence to it. Now, what does it do in terms of an overall gain in terms of personality gain, in terms of attitudinal gain? That whenever you have to make a case for something, you will always make it with research, with objective thinking, and knowing the art of argumentation. So, giving the student a tool to better a skill in order to do well in the examination, but always telling them what is the larger gain from it. So when they do a theory of knowledge exhibition, they have to select a prompt and then respond to it in 330 words. And so when I'm guiding them to in that, I am of course ensuring that they get the best score over there. But then in the course of, so one prompt says, what is the difference between knowledge, opinion, and belief? And then I'm telling them that, listen, it's very important to understand not just the difference between these three, but to understand the importance of these three. If knowledge has a role to play, belief also has a role to play in our lives. We can't just be rational, knowledgeable beings. We need belief, we need opinions. So, empowering them to understand the broader role of these concepts in life in terms of individual growth is where you shift performance mindset into a growth mindset, not discarding one for the other, but evolving their scope.
Right, ma'am. As I want to ask you so many questions, but I'll end with this question, ma'am. What's the biggest obstacle to fostering lifelong learning in schools? Keeping the curriculum, everything, the time frame in mind. Yeah.
I think I think impatience. I think we are living in a world which has no taste for slowness, which has no taste for sitting and waiting, gestating. Every moment we are living in a world where every moment is about some kind of an accomplishment, some kind of an achievement. Kya kiya? What did you do in the last 5 minutes that you sat here? Everything is attached with the outcome. I think that is the biggest impediment. It takes a little bit of an effort to get your students to see that every moment is not about converting it into an achievement. Lulls, lull, lull, lull has a very important role to play in developing you as an individual, in evolving thought and all of those things. I think the biggest challenge for me as a person is that people don't like lull, people don't like boredom, people don't have patience, everything is achievement, accomplishment, and people don't want to take the burden of thinking and questioning and reflecting, those peaceful, sitting in the balcony just staring in the sky kind of moments. So that's what I find the most challenging.
True, ma'am. As the saying goes, you need to practice happiness and you need to enjoy your boredom too. So when we achieve that, I think, it will solve the purpose. Thank you so much, Miss Vidya, for that insightful and thought-provoking presentation, ma'am. We truly appreciate you for sharing your knowledge on our platform. Anything else you want to mention before I end the session, ma'am?
No, nothing, just a gratitude that this was a rant which I was telling myself. Thank you for giving me the medium and platform to share it with the rest of the world. So thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much for
much,
that.
ma'am. Have a great day. I'll end the meeting now.